everyone, welcome to the live stream. Today we're going to be talking about permission schemes. So if you've ever struggled with figuring out how to control access to your project, how to add users, how to basically just manage the overall access to either the projects or to Jira, this is going to be the video that we're going to be covering all of those things, and hopefully in the next 60 minutes or so, you walk away with a better understanding, a better appreciation, and hopefully some better security on your Jira project. So we are going to jump into my Jira. We're going to talk about two different things. We're going to come at this from two different angles. We're going to come at it from a team managed project, which we're going to talk about, probably only take 5 minutes because team managed projects are pretty easy. And then we're going to jump into a company managed project, which is really where we're going to spend the majority of our time. So before we jump in and get too far ahead, let me just pull up the stream here. Let me get the chat. So if you're joining, please make sure you say hello in the chat. I'd love to know who's here. Drop a like, and yeah, let's get the chat going in the chat here. And let me start sharing my screen. And let's talk about a team managed project first. I want to talk about team managed only because, hey, hello, how are you? Benixton, thank you for tuning in. So we're going to cover team managed because honestly, it's going to take like 5 minutes. And then we're going to focus the bulk of this time on really tackling the harder part, the challenging part. But you never know. You never know if somebody's got a problem with a team managed project and they're trying to manage access there. So I'm going to come over to this content planning project that I have. As you can see, this is one of my team managed projects. And so I'm going to jump into that one. And clearly I never visited because I haven't gotten that notification before. Hello, Mr. Wiseman. Thank you again for coming in from the UAE. Wow, that is a good morning, I guess, because it's 8 p.m. here, and I'm assuming you're quite a few hours ahead of us. So thank you again for tuning in, Mr. Wiseman. Thank you, Benixton, for tuning in. I am a little tired. I'm not going to lie. I am running on 15 hours of work. I just drove like 100 miles, so I am a little tired. So I'm going to try to keep it interesting, try to keep it alive. So feel free in the chat, drop your questions, drop any concerns that you may have. Do you have any problems right now with managing your permissions? I know somebody in the Discord flashed up or put up a message that they were having some problems. So this was some of the inspiration, was trying to figure out how to do permissions. I do have, for full disclosure, I do have 3 videos that I've done that basically talk you through some of it, but it's kind of dispersed and it's over 3 videos. So the intent here in 60 minutes, kind of have it all in one place so that you can just reference one video and completely walk away understanding how to manage permissions in Jira. All right, so 7 a.m. here. Yep, I figured it was a little early there. All right, so without any more distractions here, we are in a team managed project. I'm going to go to project settings here on the left. And when you're in a team managed project, all you see is access. Now, access in a team managed project is super simple. You can have roles still, which is cool, but you really only get 3 roles that you care about. And that is, you're either an administrator, so you're able to do pretty much everything, which is delete, right? Create, pretty much everything's available to you. You can do a member, which gives you the ability to read and write, which basically means you can do everything except delete and obviously manage the project. And then the last thing is your viewer, which is going to give you the ability to see the issues, but not necessarily create any, not necessarily edit them, and most definitely not delete or manage the project. And that's pretty much it from a roles perspective. So you just have 3 out-of-the-box roles here. And there's a couple of settings in that you got to know. So aside from the roles, right, we have the project access here. And so in the project access, you have 3 options. You can do open, which means it's open to anyone that has access to your Jira site. And this could be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. It just depends on what you want your settings to be. But this setting right here, open, is the default. It's also the less secure. So this basically means that anybody that has access to your organization, if you have like contractors that have access to your Jira, this could be a problem because then they'll be able to see data. And seeing data is usually not the problem. Seeing sensitive data is the problem. And so you don't want to do this, right? So you probably want to change it from open. The problem is the second we change from open to, let's say, like, I don't think limit's going to be the problem, right? But yeah, so assuming you basically say, I don't want to have this open, I'm going to close this up a little bit, we can go to limited. And so limited is going to say anyone with access can search for and view and comment in the project. So they'll be able to see the project and they'll be able to see the issues within it. And they can even actually write comments into the issues, but they won't be able to create or edit issues unless you do the next part, which is adding folks to the project. So this is better. It's not great, but this basically makes it so that, again, anybody within your organization can see the project, but it doesn't solve the data security problem, right? Anybody can still see the information. They can see the project. And if you have any sensitive information in this project, they will most likely be able to see it and do whatever they want with it. So if you 100% want to lock up a team managed project, we got to go private. So only admins and the people you add to this project can search, view, create, or edit issues. So this is the most secure, but this also requires the biggest amount of overhead. What you have to do when you go private is you need to explicitly call people out. And so how do we do that? So I'm going to change this one to private. And when you change it, it's going to give you a little warning, right? I'm an admin, fortunately, so I'm not concerned, right? So now that it's private, the first thing that this does is when I go search for it in the projects, it will not show up unless my name is in that people section that I'm about to show you right now. So this is if you just have a completely open project and you want to lock this thing up, you don't want to do limited because people are still going to be able to see it. You most likely want to do private, but you want to be very careful because before you make these projects private, you want to do one critical thing. You want to make sure you still have access because you don't want to kick yourself out. I've done that before. So do as I say, not as I do. Don't kick yourself out of your team managed projects by not giving yourself the right access before you go and make these changes. So now that you kind of know what that's all about, we're going to basically come back to the roles discussion because now the roles is important. When we come to add people, this is where we're going to come and add folks, right? I don't have any other users, but I would add somebody. It doesn't really matter who you add, but put somebody in your team's name here, right? Then this is where you give them the appropriate power. So this is where you're going to determine, can they delete? Can they actually change the settings in this project? Can they just create and edit but not delete? Or do you just want them to be able to see the issues? So this is where you're going to be able to have a little bit more granularity and be able to explicitly call out what each individual can or can't do. So this is going to be up to your discretion. These are basically the same settings here that carry across a lot of projects, especially into the company managed project. But just know that I love these three. I think these are the three basic that you need. You need someone that has full God mode. You need somebody that can basically create and utilize the project to its full power. And then you need people that just need to be in the know. People that just need to kind of just be able to browse, peruse, window shopping, if you will. But you don't want them touching stuff. You don't want them editing. You don't want them doing things that can jeopardize the data. Which is why in this view, they'll be able to comment so they can, if they see something suspicious, they can let you know, but they don't necessarily have the ability to alter the data, which is a really, really good thing. And so that's pretty much it. I am going to click on this manage roles though, because I am kind of curious. I want to see, okay, so I can duplicate these roles and I can create new roles, which is fine. But aside from these though, I really don't see the need for having to create any additional roles. These three roles are usually suffice, right? Because you basically have read, write, delete, read, write, and the member, and then just read. And so I've been in IT for 11, 12 years, and that's pretty much the three basic things that you need for that. So anyways, that's it for the team manage. Like I said, it's super, super easy. The roles are all managed in here. So if I wanted to create a new role, I would create a new role from here. Keep in mind that these roles are for this project specifically, right? So these roles wouldn't exist in another team managed project. And know that all of these settings that you do here are very, very explicit to just this project, which is why it's a team managed project, right? It's all contained within that team and specifically within that project. So I'm going to open it up here for some quick questions in the chat. See if anybody's got any questions. Was that clear? Any questions here? Anybody have a team managed project? Have ever stumbled through, or maybe something wasn't clear? Just let me know. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat here. Drop a like if you haven't already. say hello if you're new in the chat, and we've got a couple people saying hello. So hello wherever you're at, good in anywhere in the world. Hello. Let me know where you're at. I'd love to see who's on the chat here and who's watching the live stream. So, anyways, while people get their keyboards out and they start typing in some comments into the chat, we are going to be transitioning over to a company managed project. Now, a company managed project, fundamentally, it's the same thing we just talked about in the team managed project. So there's not a drastic change in the overall approach. You still want to manage who can do read, write, delete. You still want to manage who can read and write, and you still want to manage who can read. Okay? The way you go about it, though, is a lot more interesting. You have a lot more options, a lot more levers, and this, I think, is where so many people get confused because there's just so many different ways to skin a cat. And I'm going to try to walk you through here and give you some best tips, give you my recommendations, and really just try to coach you and guide you through these very, they're not too confusing, but they're just like, if you don't know where to look, it can get a little overwhelming. So I'm going to start you off where I usually start off with, and that's the roles. And so when I'm going to actually come here and transition over to a company managed project. You can see down here that I am in a company managed project. And so one of the things I want you to watch here, one of the things I want you to be mindful of is when we make a setting change here, the permission is still going to be unique to the project, okay, just like the team one, except the permission scheme, the overall driver, what basically controls the overall access to the whole thing, that can be shared. That can be applied from one project to another. And especially when you watch one of my videos where I talk about sharing settings across company managed projects, that's even more self-evident because that permission scheme that you use in one project can be carried over from project to project. So if you're looking for consistency, if you're looking to just make sure that everybody kind of follows the same rules, then having a company managed project and really just honing in on learning what I'm about to teach you is going to be really, really critical to kind of help you understand how Access works. And if maybe you're not an IT admin, maybe you're not a Jira admin, but you still have a headache of man, I'm afraid to put things in Jira because somebody's watching, or I only want the right people to be able to edit issues and stuff like that. Watch this video and then give it to your Jira admin so that they can go and set up these settings for you on your behalf. So anyways, let me jump into Jira. We're going to talk at the top. We're going to talk two things at the top. We're going to talk users, groups, and roles. So I'm going to start with users and kind of show you what I mean here. So to get to users, you need to be a site admin, and then you're going to click on user management. Now, one thing that I want to warn you here, the approach that I'm going to give you, it's very, very, I don't want to say controversial, but it's very interesting because as a site admin, this is my preferred way because, in my opinion, this is the best way to scale permissions in Jira. Because if you don't go down this route, right, if you try to give all the power, and I only bring this up because I had a pretty good conversation with somebody in one of the comments on one of the videos that I made, right, where they were like, why would you make that recommendation? And I was like, well, because my recommendation scales, right? So what I'm about to show you might not be the best way for you. You should really evaluate, but you should also understand where I'm coming from. You should try to understand why I'm going to give you the recommendations I'm going to give you, because this method that I picked up over the last, 5 years now of doing Jira admin, it scales. It works well when you're in a large organization and you have a lot of projects that you're managing. So the first thing I want you to be aware of here are users. So this is fundamentally just the heartbeat, the individual that actually has access to your Jira projects or to your Jira instance. I'll say that, right? And so this user monitor screen here, this is where you would come and add additional users. Now, I only have one user because I am in the full paid version of Jira, and I'm not about to pay for two of me's, right? But I will try to pull up, if time allows, a different project where I do have a couple more users, so you can kind of see how more users look. But users, you don't want to manage access at the user level. And the reason you don't want to do this is because people in your company move. They change from team to team. They They come to the company, they leave from your company, right? Sometimes they leave and then they come back, right? So there's a lot of volatility at the user level. So to manage permissions at the user level can be a little challenging, right? Because what this basically means in a nutshell, what I'm trying to explain is when I add new user like Timmy to my projects, right? I will invite Timmy to Jira. Jira will get an account. I'm sorry, Timmy will get an account, and I'm paying for Timmy, right? What happens next is for every project, because I've already put them in private, right, or they're in a secure way, I have to go explicitly into each Jira project and then add Timmy where appropriate. This is great, right, because it gives you control. It gives the end user control. Most importantly, it gives like the admin of that Jira project control to be able to add Timmy to his or her project, right? Which you would think this is great, but think about like, what if Timmy leaves? What if Timmy changes roles? What if Timmy all of a sudden becomes a manager, and or what if Timmy all of a sudden leaves and threatens the company and is trying to steal your data or your information, right? There's just so many variables that are in play, and so for everywhere that you put Timmy in, you got to go back and clean up shop, and so that can be a daunting task when you're in a bigger organization. If you're just like in a 1 or 2 Jira project organization, maybe even 10 Jira projects, right? And you have 10 different admins. Okay, yeah, maybe you can manage it there because maybe you're a 50, less than 100% company. And at that point, things are still manageable, but they're not scalable, right? This is like, you got to think about this technique. What happens when you have 1,000 users, 2,000 users, 5,000 users, right? It becomes a nightmare to maintain a user at a time. So that's why I introduce or really, really recommend that we use groups, right? And so one of the things that you want to consider is creating groups and managing your users through the groups. Now, these are the groups that are automatically created when you create Jira. These are not appropriate for you to be using. The reason is if you use these groups here, these groups, almost everybody's automatically added to these groups. And so you lose a lot of granularity because as soon as you invite somebody to be a Jira, like as soon as you enable their Jira license, they're most likely going to be automatically added to Jira software users. And if you're like thinking, oh yeah, well they're in a group, Alex, duh, we can follow your instructions here. Well, if you put the Jira users group into your projects, all you've done is basically reopen the projects back to everybody, right? Because the second you invite somebody to your Jira project, they now have access to all the projects. So that's silly, and you don't want to do that. So what you want to do is you want to create unique groups, one per project, right? So Friday's class group. And then this is where you're going to add folks. Again, I don't have enough people to make this example cool, but you would create a group, you would put people in it, you put a description of what this represents, and then you hit create. Now this group exists and the right people are here. And so what you want to do at this point, again, from a scalability perspective, whenever you onboard somebody and you know they're going to need access to a specific group, right? You can just add them to that group and have that be part of your onboarding process. Again, if you're in a 20, 50% company, maybe not so critical. 2,000, 3,000 person company, very, very critical that you keep track of every heartbeat that has access to your Jira instance. There is no better way, I'm telling you, than to put people in groups. Because from groups, you can manage a bulk of people. And this is good. You want this. You want to be able to manage people in groups. So I would recommend creating groups. Now, the strategy you use for groups, that can vary, right? Some teams, you create a group per Jira project. Some teams create a group per team. Some groups create a group per organization, department, so on and so forth, right? You can get kind of creative with how you structure your groups, but the important part and the key takeaway here is create some groups, add folks into that group. That way you're just managing the adding and removing of folks into a group, which happens upon when you create the user. And it also happens when you remove the user. So great input and output there to basically be managing that permission at that right moment in time. So now that we have the groups are good. We're gonna put this on the side and we're gonna come back and revisit groups. So don't forget about groups. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch back into Jira because you'll notice I'm in my admin.atlassian.com. I'm gonna switch back to Jira. I'm gonna go to the gear on the right hand side and I'm now gonna go to system. And so within system, I'm going to come over to project roles. And these are going to be very similar not the same, but very, very similar to the roles that we were looking at and exploring in the team managed project. The only difference is that those roles, if you remember from a few minutes ago, they were very unique, very explicit to that project. These are global. These are going to be across all of your projects. So they're going to be available for every company managed project. So with that said, you want to be careful, right? You do not want to be snowflakey here. You don't want to create you don't essentially want to create departments in here, right? You don't want to have like HR. You don't want to have marketing. You don't want to have like all these different roles because it doesn't make sense. The roles should be like read, write, or delete, which is the perfect administrators, developers, and users. Or the way Team Manage explains it, which I really actually like, their description at least, administrators, members, and viewers, right? I come from that software background, and just administrators, developers, and users are usually a pretty clear descriptor of read, write, delete, read, write, and read. And so it's up to you what you feel more comfortable with. But the last thing, the thing you do not want to be putting in here is departments. You don't want to be putting teams, right? That is just too granular, and that's appropriate for a group, but not appropriate for a role. So I would recommend, if I was in your organization, I would limit it to just these three roles, because these three roles are going to, again, give you that read, write, delete, that read, write, and that read, right? So that's all you need. To create a role, you just come down here, type in the role name, and you click add role, and you'll add it. So obviously I already have three added, and so you don't need to do that. Oops, down here. You guys gotta tell me when I'm not sharing my screen. You're gonna come down to name, put the name, put a description, click add role, that'll create it. Now, I do want to give you a little added bonus for everybody here watching the live stream. I find myself in a situation where every time I create a project, I inadvertently lose access to the project because my permission scheme is too restrictive. And if you've ever run into that problem and you're a Jira admin and you automatically want to be added to every project so you don't have to come into the back door. You want to come in this screen for the administrators and you want to manage the default members. This is where you want to add yourself. So if you add yourself here to the default users or to the default group, maybe you want to add the site admins to every project, or maybe you just want to add yourself. You can come in here to edit, put your name, select it, and then when you click add, every time going forward, when you create a new project, because administrators is always going to be in every project, guess what? You're going to immediately have access to the project. So this is really, really key to make sure. It's more of an annoyance when you're not an administrator, when you're not automatically added, because after you hit create, you got to circle back around and then you got to go and add it. So do this step to save yourself a lot of time. This little 10-second step here will save you hours and hours, because I can't tell you, I probably created like 100 projects where I'm like, shoot, I have to go back and add myself. So anyways, that is a little nugget of information for you all. So keep that in mind as you are managing your projects here. Okay, so we have the roles. So let's level set here a little bit. So we have the roles and we have the groups. Okay, independently, they don't really do much. They both kind of will have they each have their purpose, and they're both going to be used strategically, but we're not quite ready yet. We're not quite ready to use them. The Jira project is going to be able to utilize them. They'll be able to utilize the groups, and we'll be able to utilize the roles. But this next step, the step number 3, is where things are going to start to become a little bit more clear. Now, even then, though, we still need to go to a step 4, but step 3, things are going to start to make a whole lot more sense to you, hopefully. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the settings here, and we're going to go to issues, and then on the far left hand side, we're going to scroll all the way downtown, and we're going to permission schemes. Once you're in permission schemes, for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to open up my brand new permission scheme, but you would add a new permission scheme. Whoa, I am not sharing again. Folks, you guys got to catch me on these, right? So let me do it again for the people that are watching, because I totally forgot to share that screen. So we're going to go to settings, issues. Good thing I use very descriptive language, right? Let's go all the way down, go to permission schemes, and then you're going to land back where we were. Okay, so now that you're in this permission scheme section here, You have a couple of options. And so here's kind of where I want to give you again another little life-saving tip, some information for you to kind of just keep in the back of your mind, because these things can they can they can help you not bang your head against the table so much. I guess is the best way for me to describe it, right? And so you could if you wanted to create added permission scheme, give it a name, and I won't do it because what it does is it gives you a completely blank canvas. This is a double-edged sword. This can be very dangerous, and let me tell you why. When you create a software project, this is the default software scheme that is created with almost every single project you create. When I open it, you'll notice that I have this project role of Atlassian add-on project access. And you know what? Just because I'm feeling very, very in a good mood, well, I'm very tired, I'm going to create a new permission scheme just to kind of show you, give you an idea. A new, I'm going to name it a completely new scheme, right? And so when I hit add, you'll notice that, oops, well, here we go. When I open it up, you'll notice that it's empty. Like there's nothing on this right side. And this is where I want you to be careful, because if you are not careful, you will break a lot of Jira if you go down this route. If you create a completely new scheme, bad things will happen, and mainly bad things will happen the second that you start using plugins or automation in Jira. Because that one permission that was flashed on the screen here, let me get back to it with the default software scheme here. This simple Atlassian add-ons project access, all of the plugins, all of the automations, bunch of things that are built into Jira, baked into the product, rely on this functionality, rely on this item being in every single one of these to work. Without this, you're going to break Jira inadvertently. So if you want to avoid that headache and you don't want to actually break your Jira, my recommendation to you is take an existing one like the default software scheme, which by the way is really good. Chef's kiss on this one, right? It gives you everything you possibly need out of the box, kind of, not really, if you want an open environment. But it gives you everything you need just to kind of get started. But the second you want to start locking things down, you're going to have to make your own scheme. Now, so to do that, right, all you need to do is select that default software scheme, come over to the right, click on copy, and then we have this, what I have, a brand new permission scheme. So this brand new permission scheme here that I'm about to show you is basically a copy of another project, but it has, of another scheme, but it has all the Atlassian add-ons access. And this is the bare minimum. This is what you want your project schemes to have as you're gonna start getting into the customization, because these right here, these settings, these default ones again are the very bare minimum. They're like the essentials that you absolutely need. From here, we're gonna add a couple things. And so let me walk you through a couple. So I'm not gonna cover 100% of all these because these get kind of tedious. I do have a video where I basically break down every single one of these. So if you want to know what each of these do, not only can you read the English, but just make sure you go check out that one video. I gotta remember, but I'll try to link it in the description below. But it's kind of, I'll highlight the important things. I'll leave it at that, right? So in this training here, just to not take up too much time, I'm gonna cover the very, very key items that you 100% do not want to skip and that you want to set up. Okay, so anyways, let me kind of walk you through what's going on the screen, and hopefully all this is going to make a lot more sense in a few minutes. So first we have the permission. So the permission is the lever that you're going to control, and that's the actual activity that a user wants to do, and the permission will tell you what it is that user can or can't do. Okay, so that's just a very descriptive item that basically tells you what they can do. The next item is the grant to, and this is going to define who can do it. Okay, now keep in mind that this is a very loose definition of who. You have 3 options. Let me take that back. You have like 12 options, maybe 15. I'll show them to you. But you really only want to use one option. And I'm going to tell you why. So even though you have a ton of options to choose from, you really only want to use one option here. So let's look at administer projects. This is the ability to basically add releases. This is going to be the ability to like change the name of the project, change the key of the project, add people, remove people, and very, very important administrative things like that. So you don't want just anybody to be able to do this. You want to basically reserve this for a limited subset of people. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this update here. And this update, and here's the 15 things that I was telling you about, right? So from here, you're going to be able to grant it to a project role, which is the roles we just defined. You're going to be able to give it to a specific application, to a group, make it completely public, make it so that any logged in user can do it. We can give it to, if you have JSM, to a portal. We can make it to the reporter of any issue to be able to have the issue or have this power. We can give it to a specific user. So if you just want one individual that always is able to do everything, and that individual is explicitly called out. One of the folks that I work with, the CEO of the company, is a single user. That CEO can do everything. So his name is plastered all over the place. Because guess what? CEO is probably not going to go anywhere. So that CEO wants to be able to do everything. I'm just going to put him in there. We can also inherit the project lead. So every project has a project lead, so we can inherit that. We can also take current assignee. We can add a user to a custom field value. So we have a custom field that is of the type user, and then we have a custom field that's of the type group. So we have a lot of options. But even though we have a lot of options, I'm still gonna recommend stick to the basics. Don't get too advanced here, because when you get fancy with your permission schemes, that's when you're asking for trouble. That's usually where you fall into some areas where you end up locking yourself out. So my number one tip is come to project role, and we're gonna pick from that beautiful 3 roles that we've created a few minutes ago. So I'm just gonna click administrators here because I want my administrators to be able to do this. Now, you're probably asking yourself at this point, okay, Alex, so we got administrators. Who's my administrator? Is it the site admins? Is it the Jira admins? Which administrators, right? So the answer to that is a simple neither. Your administrators, as defined here, is a fake's the wrong word. It's a placeholder to who we're going to define to be an administrator, all right? And this is where that 4th step is really going to come and put it all together, because in that 4th step, we're going to bridge the groups that we created at the very, very beginning and the roles that we defined, and we're going to marry them together. And I'm going to show you exactly how that whole thing comes to life. But the reason I want to do administrators here is because every project that you have might have a different administrator. And if you do that, if you do this way, right, where I just granted the permission to a role instead of a user or a group, then I have the flexibility to toggle who gets the administrator without having to define a brand new permission scheme for every project. Again, not scalable. Manageable when you have 10, 15 projects. Unfathomable when you have 200 projects. So you want to leverage these common permission schemes as much as possible so that you can really take advantage of this like scalability and abstraction that allows you to like just pop people in the right spot, and then the access is going to be granted automatically as appropriate. So that's that first one for that project role. So the next critical item, oops, my light turned off for some reason. So the next critical item that we want to talk about is browse projects. This right here is super, super critical. More important than administrative projects. The browse project is very, very important. Now, whoever you assign browse projects to, this will define if when they go to projects at the top in the navigation bar, this will define if they see that project in that list. So if you want somebody to basically have access, aka read only, you want to make sure that at a very, very minimum, these individuals have browse projects power or permission, right? And so here is where we're going to want to give it to all the roles. We want our administrators to be able to do it. Now, this is really annoying. This next part's super annoying. I got to do it 3 times. We want to make sure our developers can do it. Again, read write. And then we want to make sure that our users can do it, which is just read. So if I were to leave it at this point, anybody that I'm going to assign, again, you got to stick around for this part 4. So please make sure you're watching this whole thing, right? Because this is going to all make sense in the next 10 minutes here. But if you don't watch, you're going to miss out on some pretty key information here. So these right here will give you read only, but you can't do anything with the project. So we got to keep going down. We got to keep adding stuff to then make this project a little bit more interactive. And we got to give some people the ability to create stuff, right? And so next step is to kind of come down a little bit more. We're going to skip over managed sprints. I would recommend you give this to admins and developers, or just admins. It just depends on your setting there. And again, go watch that other video where I actually do break these all into detail so you can understand who and what exactly needs to be in these roles. But let's come down to these assignable users, assign issues. Okay, so far all we've done is we've created a role. We defined a role that will be able to administer the project, and we define roles that will be able to see, read only the project. Now we want to give some people the ability to create stuff. And so at the bare minimum, when we come to create issues, we want to give a couple of roles. We want to give it to the admins, because why not? And then we want to give it to the developers. What we don't want to do, we don't want to give it to the users. Because if you give it to the users, if I were to add users here, it's pointless. At that point, I've given everybody read and write. I wanted to very explicitly keep certain people at a read only. And so down below the fold here, below this line here under issue permissions, you most likely will not want to give users any power. The only place you might want to add users is to be able to add comments. And so down here under add comments, I would go as far as like any logged in user at that point, or I would give it to, again, all the roles. So it just really it just really depends on your permission scheme or your level of granularity you want to get to. But if you want to be very, very explicit, you're going to be adding it to like all these roles here. So anyway, so this is kind of how you see the problem here though, or the challenge you say is we're essentially recreating a lot of the basics that are in that team manage, right? We take for granted how easy it is to do these controls in team manage. But at this point, you might be asking yourself, like, well, Alex, why in the world did we just go through this whole trouble? Why can't we just use a team manage project? And that's because of everything else you can do, right? So you can fine tune these levers so well that you can control who can manage the sprint. You can control who's able to be assigned an issue. You can control who has the ability to do the action of assigning issues. You can control who can close them, who can create them, who can delete them, who can edit them, who can link them, who can modify who created the project. So you get so much power that this alone is worth it. You just need to understand how all these things work so you can really take advantage of them and use them to their full potential. Because when you use these correctly, when you modify these permission schemes correctly, your Jira just starts running like a really, really well-oiled machine, right? And so you want to spend some time to make sure you architect this, right? Permission schemes are not something you just want to just randomly like hack together and say, ta-da! Like, no, you actually like really want to put some thought into this and sit down with your team and go, what should this look like? What is the safest thing? What are we trying to achieve? And then fine tune these levers the way you need them to be tuned. So anyways, because I'm running out of time and I do want to get, I do want to essentially make sure that I have enough time to cover this whole thing here. Once you've defined enough of these, once you're satisfied, right? And so just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to add a couple more. I'm going to add my administrators. They're the only ones that can delete stuff. I don't want anybody else deleting them. My edit, that's going to be my administrators, and that's going to be my developers, but not my users, right? I don't want my users to edit stuff because then that defeats the purpose, right? And so one thing that I want you to take a note here is you're probably asking yourself, how come we haven't just added the group that you added, right? And this is where I want to take a step back and talk about like that abstraction and that scalability. I could, if I wanted to, explicitly put a group in here, And then whenever people are added to that group, they're automatically inheriting this power. The problem with that approach, though, right? And let me kind of just describe it to you, right? So if I wanted to give a group like that one group that I created, which was Friday's class group, the ability to link issues, right? Like they're here. So what this basically means is that anytime that I add somebody to the Friday's class group, they're automatically going to inherit this link issues. The challenge becomes, though, the second that this permission scheme is used in two different projects, what if I don't want people from that group to be able to do that permission? You're kind of stuck because it is hard coded into your permission scheme. So at that point, guess what? You got to make a whole new permission scheme. But to add insult to injury, as like a scrum master or a product owner, right, or even a developer, you're not usually privy. You don't have the insight or the information to even know how your permission scheme set up, because that's usually reserved for like your site administrators. So this can be like, it can be a really good band-aid solution and a very easy solution to, like, oh, let's just add groups to my permission scheme. That way I'm not toggling. That way this eliminates the need for step number 4, right? But in Spanish we have a saying that says el huevón trabaja doble, and in essence, what it, in a nutshell, it means like, if you're lazy, you're gonna work twice as hard because you're gonna have to like redo your mistake. And so the recommendation here is, if you go down this route of adding groups, you're gonna just want to be very, very careful, because this won't scale. Every project that shares this permission scheme is gonna inherit that, and maybe today it's okay, but 6 months from now, a year from now, you're just gonna give future self some headaches. That it's easier if you just architect this correctly from the get-go, and you use these best practices that I'm talking about. So anyways, I am going to remove that group because I don't like it. And we're going to take the next 5 minutes here to essentially put it all together. Now that we have some roles, we have some permissions assigned to those roles, we learned how the roles that we created earlier come into play into the permission scheme. Now we're going to put it all together. Now we're going to basically marry the groups, marry the roles, and marry this permission scheme. So to do that, we're going to have to jump into a project. So I'm going to jump into my Jira Scrum project, and we're going to go on the left-hand side of project settings, and we're going to basically drive from here. So first place I want you to watch is permissions. We're going to come down to permissions, and this is going to be the place where you change your permission scheme. So this is using the default software scheme. As I mentioned, every single project, when company managed project software, whoa, I can speak. Every single software company managed project, when you create it, will automatically have this default software scheme. So if you don't want that, you would come over here to actions, use a different scheme, and then you would pick like the brand new scheme that I created, right? And so that's how you do that. Now I'm not going to do that because I'm basically going to show you using this default software scheme. I'm going to remind you, right? So for administrator projects, we have the administrator role. For browse projects, we have any access, which not the most ideal, but try to remember what the permissions. You know what? Screw it. Let's just change the permission scheme. I know I'm gonna break things later because I didn't architect this all the way through. So I'm gonna want to make sure somebody please remind me in the chat, if you guys are watching. Somebody remind me in like 10 minutes to switch this back. But you'll see here I have the administer project is going to be my administrators. My browse project is going to be administrators, developers, and users. And so now this permission scheme is associated to the project. It's time for the most magical part where we put it all together. Don't blink. If you're multitasking, this is the part where you're going to want to stop multitasking and pay attention to this next part. All two of you in the chat here, thank you so much for watching. Drop a like if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already subscribed as well. And so let's do the marrying. Let's do the most important part here. So we're going to go to people. And in this people section, you'll notice that where's everybody? There's nobody here. And so if I just leave this project alone, in fact, I'll show you. If I try to go back to the project, I'm not sure if it'll do it, but let's try it out. Yeah, see, the project isn't available. But how could that be? I was just in it, right? But because my permission scheme explicitly says that somebody, some entity needs to be given the role of administrator, that you saw the little island, nobody was there, so nobody's been defined anything. And because of that, this project doesn't exist. doesn't exist to me, at least. It still lives. It's still a project, but I can't see it until I add myself to the project. Fortunately, I'm a site admin, so if you are a site admin, here's a little trick, right, to get back yourself into a project. You're gonna come to the project. You're gonna come to the right hand side. You're gonna go to project settings. Hopefully, y'all can see this. Oh no, my internet connection. There we go. Okay, now we can go to people, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add myself to this project. So I'm gonna add myself, Alex, to the role of administrators. Now when I go back to project here, and I hit refresh, I am not going to get kicked out. I can actually see the project. I can see the backlog. I can see the board. I can see everything. I didn't get kicked out because I basically I belong in here now, right? So this is kind of important for you to understand. So don't get scared if you actually get kicked out, because again, you have that secret backdoor. So hopefully the people that watch this whole video, they'll know about the secret backdoor, but other people won't. But one key thing that I kind of just did very, very quickly, and I want to go back and talk about it, because I kind of hyped this all up and then I panicked and then I skipped over it. But here's the important part. And now there's only one of you. So you're all going to be missing the most important part. When we come to this screen, we need to add people. We need to marry the individuals, the groups, or the individuals to the proper role. Then that role is going to automatically give, based on that permission scheme, the right power that we've defined. Okay? So all you got to do, and I kind of did this very quickly, right? But you add the user here, and then you're going to pick the right role. And so I can actually add, if you remember from that, what was it? Friday. It was called Friday class group, and I can give them the roles of developers. And so now, whenever I onboard somebody, I will put them into that Friday's class group, and then they will automatically inherit any project that has Friday's class group defined as a group that has the developer or administrator or whatever you want to add. It will basically give them that power. And again, I missed this step up, so let me do it again, because you guys aren't letting me know in the chat. Folks, let me know. You're going to add people. Let me do it again. Let me just remove this again so you can kind of see it. So to add the group, you're going to go to add people, look for the group, and then from there, you're going to add the role. And so I'm going to give them developer. You click add, and then again, just to repeat, anybody that gets added to this group will automatically inherit this power. Now this is scalable because again, you only have to worry about that initial setup. You only have to set up that relationship once, where you put this group with this role that matches that permission scheme. And now going forward, you only have to worry about adding people to that group. And this makes managing Jira so much easier, because no longer do you have to worry about every single individual as a one individual snowflake. Right now you can group people, and if you ever need to delete people, if you ever need to update something, right? If I wanted to all of a sudden the whole group got promoted and they all should be administrators now, guess what? I don't have to sit here and add and promote 15 people to administrators. I can just come here, toggle that button, and now they can be administrators and developers, and they're going to get the highest setting. And so that's pretty much it. That's really, really the easiest way to kind of manage permission schemes in Jira. There's so many different ways to skin this cat. I could have just added each individual, given them the role. I could have, in the permission scheme, added each individual. In the permission scheme, I could have added groups. So there's just so many different ways. This is the way I recommend. This is the way I do all my projects. I like this, but let me know what you think. I wanna know, like, am I off base? I've been doing it this way again for 5 years, but most of my user base has been like in the hundreds, if not thousands, of users. I think my very first Jira instance, I was like at the 3 to 4,000 user base, and so I've always just been like using these really, really, really big Jiras, and so this is really beneficial. This really, really does help quite a bit. Only because, again, I don't have to explicitly sit there and add so many individuals, right? And so I hope this is beneficial to you. I hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. I am drastically trying to get to that 1,000 user mark. So if you haven't subscribed, you have no idea how much that supports the channel. I'm also going to flash the Discord here. So I do have a Discord where if you want to ask more questions, have direct access to me. Feel free to join the Discord. I'm not sure, this link might not actually be working anymore, so let me pull in a new link. I think I might have to update this one, so let me take this off real quick. I'm gonna go to Discord. I'm gonna generate just a new link here for the stream here, so if anybody wants to join the Discord, we are going to make that happen for you. So let me create an invite. I need to create a new one. Okay, so I just copied it. Give me just 1 second. I need to come over here to my. Okay, well, let's paste this here. Okay, save. All right, so now I'm gonna flash this up on the screen. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet or haven't joined the Discord, recommend you join the Discord, because that's gonna be your place to basically come build the community, come be a part of the community that I'm trying to build, come have some direct access. You'll notice that if you go in that Master Jira in 60 minutes, somebody had asked, hey, yesterday they had asked, hey, would it be cool if you can explain like how to manage user access settings, right? And so here it is. Here's a dedicated video just for that. So again, take advantage of this community that I'm creating here. Come get your questions answered. And I am done. I am so tired. I'm gonna go to sleep. So thank you very much to everybody. Next week we're gonna try to do a little bit earlier. And this week I just had some other thing I had to attend to, so it took a little extra. But thank you very much to everybody that tuned in. I'm gonna say thanks to everybody in the chat. Feel free to say goodbye, say good night, say good morning, wherever you're at. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure you share this with your friends and family, co-workers, whoever you think will benefit from having access to having a complete breakdown of how all the permissions work within Jira. So that's pretty much it. I will see you all next week, and keep in mind that I am dropping videos Monday through Friday, so make sure you're liking, dropping likes, dropping some comments, help out the algorithm, and most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next week.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me, and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour, take a cold shower, scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder, and f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns who were all taught they deserve an ounce. It's only worth it if you work for it. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown.